There's a place in Australia where some of the most dangerous people in the country live. They're locked away from the world, cut off from family, cut off from friends, cut off from everything normal people take for granted. But there's one thing they can't escape. One thing that happens 3 times every single day, no matter who you are or what you've done. They have to eat. You might think you know what prison food looks like. Maybe you've seen it in movies, gray slop on a tray, prisoners complaining about terrible meals. But what if I told you the reality is much more interesting than that? Today, we're going deep into Australia's prison system to answer one simple question. What do the country's most feared prisoners actually eat every day? I promise you, the answer is going to surprise you. But before we go any further, if you're curious about the hidden world of prisons and want to see more documentaries like this, hit that subscribe button right now. And drop a comment below telling me, would you be able to survive on prison food? Let's start with a number. Australia has different types of prisons: minimum security, medium security, and then there's a third type, Supermax. These places have names that sound almost normal: Goulburn, Bar 1, Port Phillip. But inside live men whose crimes are so serious they can never mix with other prisoners. This is where Australia keeps the worst of the worst. So, why should we care what they eat? Because food in prison isn't just about staying alive. It's about power, control, and dignity. For the men in those maximum security cells, it might be the only thing in their entire day they have any choice about. Picture this. It's 6:30 a.m. in a Supermax prison. Inside a tiny cell, smaller than most bathrooms, a prisoner wakes up. At exactly 7 a.m., a slot in his door opens. A guard slides through a tray. Breakfast. But this isn't mystery slop. Australian prison regulations require every meal to meet strict nutritional standards. That breakfast tray typically contains cereal like cornflakes, long-life milk, 2 slices of bread, maybe some jam, a piece of fruit, and instant coffee or tea. It's basic. It's boring. But it's not the horror show you imagine. But here's where the story takes a turn. What I just described is what the government gives them. What if I told you many prisoners have access to something more? There's a secret economy in Australian prisons called buy-up. Every prisoner who behaves well can earn a few dollars a week. Some have money sent from family. Once a week, they can fill out a form to buy items from the prison canteen: instant noodles, tuna, good coffee, chocolate, chips, even sauces. Think about that. A prisoner in isolation, locked up 23 hours a day, can still buy a Coke and a Mars bar. It's not freedom, but it's a tiny piece of choice in a world where everything is controlled. But this creates a divide. In Goulburn's Supermax unit, some prisoners get nothing. No family support, no money. These men eat only what the government provides. Breakfast, cereal. Lunch, a sandwich or a hot meal like sausages and mash. Dinner, chicken curry or beef stew. It rotates on a 4-week cycle. Boring, but nutritionally balanced. Then there are the prisoners with money. They can spend up to around $150 a week on buy-up. You could buy dozens of packets of instant noodles, multiple cans of tuna, and chocolate whenever you want it. In a place where you have no control, food becomes the one area where money still matters. But even with money, they're not ordering steaks. The canteen list is strictly controlled. No fresh ingredients. Nothing that could be used as a weapon. Everything is processed and sealed. And yet, in the hands of a creative prisoner with nothing but time, these basic ingredients can become something more. There are men who've become experts at prison cooking. They create prison pizza using bread, crushed chips, and sauce packets. They make spreads by mixing tuna and mayonnaise. This isn't fine dining. But in a world of repetition, it's something they control. Food becomes an art form when you have nothing else. So while they're creating meals in their cells, who's making the official prison food? In New South Wales, an organization called Corrective Services Industries runs massive, factory-like kitchens inside the prisons. And the cooks? They're prisoners themselves. Not the dangerous ones, but trusted minimum and medium security inmates. Under supervision, they prepare thousands of meals a day, following strict recipes on that 4-week rotation. The food is then transported in heated trolleys to the different prison sections. So, what about the most famous, most dangerous criminals? Do they get special treatment? The answer is no. Whether you're in for car theft or crimes that made international headlines, your breakfast is still cereal and bread. There are no special meals for famous criminals. The only difference is where you eat it. A minimum security prisoner might eat in a hall with others. A Supermax prisoner eats alone in his cell with a plastic spork, his meal passed through a slot in the door. The system is designed to be equal, but the reality of life behind bars means that even when it comes to something as simple as food, not all prisoners are treated the same. Imagine having money in the bank, but you can't even buy a chocolate bar. For some of Australia's most dangerous prisoners, this is reality. They're on such strict regimes that even the canteen is off limits. Their only food is 3 basic meals, day after day, sometimes for years on end. About punishment. About breaking down the parts of a person that feel human. Think about your own life. You celebrate with special food, you find comfort in certain meals, you connect with friends over dinner. Food is social, it's emotional, it's memory. Now, imagine all of that is taken away. In prison, you can't cook your mother's recipe. You can't even choose what you want for breakfast. For prisoners in Australia's Supermax units, food becomes an obsession. Not because they're starving, but because it's the only thing that changes. Will today's fruit be an apple or a banana? Will dinner be curry or stew? These tiny variations become monumental when everything else is the same. The same walls, the same cell, the same routine. What might surprise you is that Australian prisons do accommodate special diets. Vegetarian, halal, kosher, and medical diets are all provided. Why? It's not necessarily out of kindness, but practicality. Lawsuits for discrimination or medical negligence are expensive. It's simply cheaper to provide the right food. So even in the darkest corners of Supermax, a prisoner with celiac disease will get gluten-free meals. The system isn't cruel for the sake of it. It's just empty, mechanical, efficient, and that efficiency is what makes the food so soul-crushing. In the parts of prison where inmates can interact, food becomes a currency. A packet of instant noodles can buy you a favor. A can of tuna can be traded. Real coffee is like gold. This creates a whole black market economy running on snacks. But in isolation, you can't trade. You're alone. So, some prisoners just stockpile food in their cells. Dozens of packets of noodles, stacks of chocolate bars. Not to eat, but because buying them is the only economic choice they have. Food is also a weapon of control. When a prisoner misbehaves, one of the first punishments is losing their canteen privileges. That tiny bit of choice, that small comfort they could buy, is gone. It's a devastating blow, not because they'll go hungry, but because they're back to the baseline. Back to the same rotating menu. Back to having no control at all. It's a powerful behavior management tool, and everyone inside knows it. So how much does all this cost? Roughly $9 a day per prisoner. That's for 3 meals. Multiplied by 42,000 prisoners, Australia spends over $138 million a year just on prison food. But that's a drop in the bucket compared to the total cost of incarceration. That's why the focus isn't on making food good. It's on making it adequate, safe, and cheap. But here's the bigger question. What happens when these prisoners get out? After years of eating institutional food, many have lost the ability to cook or even connect with normal meal patterns. Some researchers argue that better food and teaching cooking skills could actually help with rehabilitation. But others say, why should criminals get good food? It's a debate Australia hasn't really settled. There's a strange irony here. For many inmates with histories of substance abuse, prison might be the first time in years they're getting regular, nutritious meals. Their physical health can actually improve, even as the monotony of the food chips away at their mental state. Prison food might be saving the lives of people who were slowly killing themselves on the outside. So we've seen that food is about psychology, control, and a sliver of choice in a world that has none. But there's so much more to this story. We haven't talked about the contraband food economy, the role food plays in prison violence, or the shocking menu items that have caused protests and legal challenges. The truth is, prison food is a window into how we view punishment itself. The most feared criminals in Australia eat cereal for breakfast and drink instant coffee. In our minds, they are monsters. But in their cells, they are just people eating boring food, trying to find tiny ways to feel human. And that might be the most disturbing thing of all. There's something about rules that makes people want to break them. It doesn't matter if you re a kid sneaking candy before dinner or a prisoner locked in Australia's most secure facility. The moment someone says, you can't have this, that thing suddenly becomes the most important thing in the world. And in prison, where almost everything is forbidden, food becomes the ultimate temptation. In our last story, we talked about what prisoners are supposed to eat. But now, we need to talk about what they're not supposed to eat. The forbidden foods. The contraband. The items that prisoners risk punishment, solitary confinement, even more time on their sentence just to get their hands on. Because where there's a rule, there's always someone trying to break it. Let's start with the most obvious forbidden item: alcohol. Any form of it is completely banned, and the punishment for brewing it is severe. This is exactly why fresh yeast is banned from prison canteens. But that doesn't stop anyone. Prisoners simply started saving fruit from their meals. Apples, oranges, anything with natural sugar. They'd mash it all up in a plastic bag, add some sugar packets saved from breakfast, seal it, and hide it somewhere warm. After a few weeks, natural fermentation turns that mush into something alcoholic. It's called pruno in American prisons. Here in Australia, it's just home brew. It tastes absolutely terrible, but it gets you drunk. And in a place where you have no escape from your own thoughts, that becomes worth the risk. So how do these forbidden items even get into a prison? Well, first there are the visitors. A mother might slip a small packet of real coffee beans into her mouth before a visit and pass it to her son in a kiss. Or items get hidden in baby diapers, a place guards are reluctant to search thoroughly. Then there are the staff. Every so often, a guard is caught smuggling things in for money, or because they've been manipulated by an inmate. When a staff member decides to smuggle, they're almost impossible to catch because they aren't searched like visitors are. But the most modern smuggling method? Drones. It sounds like science fiction, but it's real. Someone on the outside flies a drone over the prison walls in the middle of the night, dropping a package in a prearranged spot for an inmate to collect. These packages can contain anything from drugs to mobile phones, but sometimes it's just food. Real beef jerky, a specific brand of chocolate bar, or chewing gum, which is banned because it's used to jam locks. To a prisoner who hasn't tasted their favorite snack in 10 years, it's worth everything. And sometimes, the source of forbidden food is right inside the prison walls. The trusted inmates who work in the kitchens have access to all the raw ingredients. A kitchen worker might pocket a few extra pieces of chicken or some real butter instead of margarine. They eat better than anyone else, not because their official meals are different, but because they have access. And if they're smart, they can trade these items with other prisoners for favors or protection, creating a whole other economy within the system. If you're finding this fascinating and want to support more content like this, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment and tell me what surprised you most so far. Now let's talk about something darker: food-related violence. Most of the time, disputes are minor. But in maximum security, where tensions are already high, food can become a serious trigger. Fights have started over a stolen packet of noodles and ended with someone in the hospital. And the violence isn't always between prisoners. Hot water, available in cells for making coffee, has been weaponized. Prisoners collect it, let it get even hotter, and then throw it on someone. It's called napalming in prison slang, and the injuries are horrific. The weapon? Just hot water meant for instant noodles. It's a constant, difficult balance for prisons. Give inmates enough to feel human, but not so much that they can hurt each other. In prison, food is never just food. It's chemistry, defiance, currency, and sometimes even a weapon. Did you know that food in prison can be a weapon, a currency, and even a tool for protest? But the story is more complex than you might imagine. Sometimes, prisoners will deliberately make themselves sick just to get a change of scenery. It sounds crazy, but when you're locked in a cell for 23 hours a day, even a medical ward can feel like a vacation. It's a way to break the monotony, a desperate grab for some control over their lives. Eating disorders are a serious, yet rarely discussed, issue in prisons. Some prisoners develop behaviors similar to anorexia, refusing meals and exercising obsessively. Medical staff do their best to intervene, but their options are limited. They can't force someone to eat, and they can't stop them from buying food that's legally available. Food becomes both a coping mechanism and a tool for self-destruction. And if you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, please know that help is available. Resources and support lines are listed in the description below. Prisoners have also used food to protest. In 2018, inmates in New South Wales filed official complaints about the food. It wasn't about nutrition. The meals met all the official standards. It was about the taste. The same 4-week menu rotated 13 times a year. They wanted more variety, better seasoning. But changing the food system for tens of thousands of prisoners is a massive logistical and financial challenge. In the end, only minor changes were made. A more extreme form of protest is a food strike, but these are rarely effective. Authorities can monitor the prisoners, and if it goes on too long, they can be force-fed. However, there are moments of relief. Most Australian prisons serve a special Christmas meal. It's still prison food, but it's a significant improvement and something inmates look forward to all year. Some prisons also try to provide special meals for cultural holidays like Eid or Diwali, but this varies widely from one facility to another, creating inequalities that breed resentment. Sometimes, the food itself causes an uproar. At one prison, an infamous dish nicknamed Mystery Stew was so unpopular that prisoners refused to eat it. Officially, it was mixed protein stew, a combination of various meat scraps. It was nutritious, but the unidentifiable contents were psychologically unsettling. The system eventually removed it. Another time, a batch of questionable-smelling fish was delivered to multiple prisons, sparking widespread refusals. The incident taught prisoners a hard lesson. The system's definition of acceptable food is very different from their own. Interestingly, research shows a direct link between food quality and prisoner behavior. Studies have found that even slight improvements in meals, more variety, better seasoning, can reduce violence and improve mental health. Better food leads to calmer, more cooperative inmates. So why not just improve the food? The cost would be enormous, and politically, it's a non-starter. Imagine the public outcry over spending more taxpayer money on pampering criminals. So, the research remains on paper, and the bland, monotonous food remains on the plates. A new trend is shaking things up, though. Younger prisoners are arriving with different expectations. They're used to vegetarian and vegan options, and they demand transparency about ingredients and allergens. They are more likely to use official grievance processes to push for change. The system is adapting, but slowly. The official food system is only half the story. Food is a complex part of prison life, a form of currency, control, and rebellion. But what happens when prisoners get out? How do they adjust to a world of infinite food choices after years of a rotating menu? And what about those who will never leave? Join us in the final part of our series as we explore these questions and ask what the way we feed prisoners says about us as a society. Imagine you've been in prison for 15 years. Every single day, you've eaten from the same rotating menu. Cereal for breakfast, sandwiches or hot meals for lunch, curry, stew, or pasta for dinner. A 4-week cycle, over and over. You've forgotten what it feels like to walk into a grocery store and choose what you want. You've forgotten the real taste of your mother's cooking, not just the memory of it. You've forgotten how to crack an egg or chop an onion. Then one day, they tell you, you're getting out. Next month, you'll walk through those gates of freedom. But here's the question nobody asks. Are you ready for it? This is where we stop talking about what prisoners eat behind bars and start talking about what happens when those bars disappear. Because the truth is, after years of institutional food, many ex-prisoners don't know how to eat like normal people anymore. And that's a much bigger problem than you might think. Let me tell you what happens on release day. A prisoner wakes up in his cell one last time. He gets his final prison breakfast, maybe cereal, maybe toast. The same food he's eaten for years, but this time it's different. It's the last time. Some guys can't even eat. They're too nervous, too excited. The food just sits there. Others eat every single bite, wanting to remember the end of an era. Then, paperwork, returning prison clothes, and finally, they walk out. For many, the very first thing they do is eat. Not because they're hungry, but because they can. They want to taste freedom. There are stories of men walking into the nearest McDonald's and ordering 5 burgers, 3 fries, a shake, everything. They eat until they re-sick because their stomachs just see and handle rich food after years of bland prison meals. Others go to their old favorite restaurant, dreaming of a meal they've craved for a decade. Sometimes it tastes just like they remembered. More often, it doesn't. Nothing ever tastes as good as the memory. Some get so overwhelmed by the noise and the choices in a restaurant that they just leave and grab a simple sandwich from a corner store. One former prisoner, let's call him Marcus, spent 12 years in maximum security. When he got out, his support worker took him grocery shopping. Marcus stood in the cereal aisle for 20 minutes, just staring. When the worker asked what was wrong, Marcus said, "There are too many kinds of cereal. I don't know which one to get. In prison, it was Wheat Bix or cornflakes. That's it. A grown man who survived a decade in one of Australia's toughest prisons couldn't choose his own breakfast. This is what institutionalization does. It doesn't just take away your freedom, it takes away your ability to choose. And cooking? That's a skill. If you don't use it for years, you lose it. Many knew how to cook before prison, but after years of having every meal prepared for them, they forget. Some go to prison so young they never even learned in the first place. Then there's the grocery store itself. Imagine you haven't been in one for 20 years. It's in sensory overload. The bright lights, the music, the crowds, it can trigger panic attacks. Some develop coping mechanisms, like buying the exact same items every single week, never varying, because making new choices is just too stressful. Food also becomes linked to memory. For some, the taste of instant noodles or beef stew will forever bring back the feeling of being in a cell. But it works the other way too. The taste of a home-cooked meal can be incredibly powerful. Some prisons allow a family meal before release. Grown men will cry eating their mother's lasagna, not just because it tastes good, but because it tastes like home, family, and everything they've lost. Some prisons are trying to help. Cooking programs teach inmates professional kitchen skills, giving them a real shot at a job on the outside. And it works. Prisoners who complete these programs are less likely to reoffend. But these programs are tiny, serving only a handful of inmates each year. The journey back to a normal life is filled with challenges most of us never consider. For those who have been released, learning to navigate the world of food is a quiet but monumental battle. It's about more than just eating. It's about reclaiming a piece of their humanity, one choice, one meal at a time. We started this journey by asking a simple question: what do Australia's most feared prisoners eat every day? The surface answer is simple: 3 nutritionally adequate but boring meals, rotating on a 4-week cycle, with the option to buy supplemental items from the canteen if they have money. But as we've seen, food in prison is never just about nutrition. It's about power, control, identity, memory, hope, and humanity. Let's talk about health. The prison system tries to provide medical diet meals for conditions like diabetes. Some manage their health carefully, but others don't. The medical staff can advise, but they can't force compliance. Ironically, for some, prison offers better health care than they get on the outside. It's a vicious cycle with food right at its heart. Then there's the cultural disconnect. Australia's prisons are multicultural, but the food isn't. An inmate from an Asian background, used to rice with every meal, might only see it a few times a week. A person from a Mediterranean background misses olive oil and fresh spices. For Indigenous Australian prisoners, it's even harder. Traditional foods, bush tucker, the things that connect them to culture and country, they simply don't exist behind bars. Food becomes another form of cultural erasure. When released, many desperately seek out these foods, not just for the taste, but to reclaim a part of themselves that was lost. And what about life after release? Imagine being handed a few $100s to start your life over. That has to cover your bond, clothes, transport, and food. It disappears fast. Many rely on government welfare, but there's often a waiting period. In that gap, they face real hunger. They turn to food banks, standing in line for a box of donated groceries, a scene hauntingly similar to lining up for meals inside. Or they eat the cheapest food they can find: instant noodles, white bread, canned beans. Fresh food is a luxury they can't afford. It's a horrible thought, but for some, prison is more food secure than freedom. But it's not all bleak. There are people who break the cycle. One former prisoner I learned about started a catering business after learning to cook in a prison program. He now employs others and has completely turned his life around, crediting that skill as his turning point. Another became a food blogger, teaching budget cooking skills he honed by supplementing his prison diet. He's turned a negative experience into something that helps thousands. These stories show that food can be a powerful tool for rehabilitation. This all leads to a fundamental question: does the way we feed prisoners matter? Some argue that prisoners are there for punishment and don't deserve good food. Others say they are still human, and better food leads to better mental health, better behavior, and a better chance at rehabilitation. Research actually backs this up. Improving food quality, not making it luxurious, just better, correlates with less aggression and depression. But this costs money, and it's a tough sell politically. So, we're stuck. knowing what might work but unable to implement it. So, where do we go from here? The men in Australia's prisons are real people. They committed real crimes, and they deserve their punishment. But they're also human beings who get hungry, who dream of their mother's cooking. When we release them without the basic skills to shop or cook, we might be setting them up to fail. We're choosing punishment over practicality. These are society's choices. Our choices. When these men and women walk out of those gates, they carry the effects of institutional eating with them. And we have to decide, did we prepare them to succeed or just prepare them to survive? If this made you think, drop a comment below. What surprised you the most? What do you think Australia should do about prison food? I read every comment because your thoughts matter. And if you want more deep dives into topics no one else is talking about, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching.